Budvar Dark Lager.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Today we have Budvar Dark Lager, and this is a revisiting video. Now, I have tried Budvar Dark Lager before, and in my opinion it is the best dark lager in the world from what I've tried so far. Better than the German dark lagers that I've tried, which are, you know, the most famous ones are the Schwarzbiers, the Kostricha being the most well known, but I have tried others as well. They don't come close to this stuff. This is great stuff. And it comes from a great brewery, and that brewery is the Budweiser Budvar Brewery, which is based in Budweiser, would you know, or a place called Czech Budweiser, which is a region in the Czech Republic which has a really long heritage of brewing beer. They go back to the 1200s from brewing beer. It was founded, the town was founded in 1235, I think it was. And one of the first things that the King of Bohemia, as it was called at the time, he granted a license to brew beer, and they gained such a reputation for quality beer in that region that the Holy Roman Empire, with Holy Roman Empire was a thing at the time. If you're not sure what the Holy Roman Empire was, it was when the Roman Empire split to the east and west, and the Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand I ordered that his beer be brewed personally for him, using beer from Czech Budweiser. That's probably not the right pronunciation, but fuck it, I can't speak the language. Anyway, the heritage of that did manifest itself throughout the years, and they really did gain a good reputation. They adopted the Reinheitsgebot when that came out, and they brewed their beer to a standard that the Germans held quite high too. So they were on a par with the quality of beer that was coming out of Germany at the time, using only the 4 ingredients of the Reinheitsgebot. And then cut a long way forward to 1895, and the brewery was founded in that town, or city as it was then, and they have been producing beer there ever since. Now, there have been some trials and tribulations from their inception. The name Budvar and Budweiser are synonymous with each other and always have been. However, Anheuser-Busch also use Budweiser as well. If you want to hear the whole legal wrangle with that, watch my earlier video about the Budvar Pale Lager versus Budweiser. It's quite an old one. It was one of the first videos that I did when I started the channel up, but it's a three-part video, and yeah, it's quite interesting how that sort of manifested itself. But needless to say, and I'm going to put my Uncle Albert hat on here, that the whole naming rights were given up a week before World War II by the Budvar Brewery to Anheuser-Busch. They were exporting beer to America, and Anheuser-Busch said, the name is competing with our name, you've got to change that name, otherwise you aren't going to be exporting beer to the USA. How they had the power to do that, I don't know. They must have been very influential at the time. They must have had presidents in their pockets, but you know what US politics are like. It's all about the lobbying. So they must have been lobbying the USA president at the time, who would have been, I think, well, that would have been Roosevelt. And they basically said, they threatened them with their export. And they were exporting a hell of a lot of beer at the time. And then, of course, World War II came along, and all their exports stopped overnight in 1942 when the Nazis occupied the brewery, and they put the brewing under their direction. And, of course, that ceased all the exports. Then, of course, after World War II, Czechoslovakia, as it was known then, it came under Soviet control, and all the breweries were nationalised. And they still did export beer, but not as on a big scale as they did pre-war. Naturally, the brewery was owned by the state, and luckily it still is. It's owned by the state now, and that means it is independent. There are no commercial interests in the brewery. It's all owned by the state, so that's a good thing. It's funded by the Czech taxpayer, which means that they have some very special techniques that they use. They only use whole cone Saaz hops, and they only ever brew Budvar in the Czech Republic, which is what I like about this brewery, and it shows in the beer as well. The pale lager is, I mean, you've all seen the pale lager. It's fantastic, but they do put it in green bottles, which in my opinion, if you're watching Budvar, fucking stop it. Put it in the brown bottles. Your beer tastes terrible in green bottles. And I will say this is in a green bottle too. Luckily, I found this in a box in Lidl, and I definitely thought I'm going to have some of that. But the box wasn't exposed to light, so I'm hoping that this won't be skunked. I don't think it will, because I managed to get it out of the light quite quickly when I took it out of the box, and then I put it straight into the fridge when I came in. So this should not be skunked. Anyway, I am rambling and raving. Needless to say, Budweiser, Budvar, as it's now known, that came into force in 1967. They basically stuck two fingers up at AB InBev and says, you can't do anything to us, we've got the commies on our side, so fuck you, Budweiser and Anheuser-Busch. And the legal wrangle still goes on to this day. And in the European Union, if I've never seen this, but because I've never bought the stuff, but in the European Union, but it's called Bud over there, and in the USA this stuff is called Tmavý. So if you're an American viewer or subscriber and you're looking at this and you're looking for this beer, you want to try it, it's called Tmavý, not Budvar. I'm sure you knew that anyway. I've rambled too long. Let's get this beer investigated. Right, this is Budvar Tmavý Ležák. Tmavý Ležák from Czech, it translates to dark lager. It's a 500ml bottle. It's 4.7%. It's 24 IBU, so in the International Bittering Unit, that Bittering Unit scale, 24 IBU is about what you'd expect for a normal lager. So this is not going to be, even though it's a dark lager, it's not going to have a bitterness like you would get from Guinness. So if you see this, and it does look a bit like Guinness in the glass, it's not really. It's a lot more refreshing because it's bottom fermented and it is a lager, and it doesn't have that real roasted bitterness. There is roasted elements on here, I will go into that later, but it's not as bitter. And 24 IBUs is how it translates to in its bitterness, in my opinion. The EBC is 95, which I think is the colour EBC, European something colour. I don't know what that is. But the beer ingredients: water, barley malt, pale malt. Now the pale malt that they use in here is the base malt, and they roast the Munich and the caramel malts that go into there. So that's what gives it its dark colour. And of course it contains Saaz hops, as you would know. That's the only hops that Budvar use, and they're very proud of that fact, and that they use whole cone fresh hops, as I mentioned in the previous section. Anyway, that's enough about Budvar. Let's get it open. Let's see what's going on. Right, there we are. There is the oldie cap. Now this is a typical Budvar cap. Very nice indeed. Red and gold. Right, let's get it into the glass. I'm only going to pour a little bit in there. So as you can see, this does look like a bottle of Guinness. What you get from a bottle of Guinness. It's very dark. It's a dark ruby-ish colour. There is a slight amber hue to it as well on the nose. Yeah, lovely, really nice. Now that smells really good. There's the roasted elements on there, you can get that, but it's nice and sweet, almost honey-like roasted coffee, if you can imagine that. Roasted coffee, dark chocolate, toned down, it's subtle, but it's there. And there's a hell of a lot of the barley. God, straight out of the bottle, that really does smell amazing. And it's as good as I remember it, which it should be, because Budvar are a very consistent brewer. That's really nice. That smells absolutely gorgeous straight out of there. And I've only put a small amount in now, and that aroma's quite big. So, you know, aroma means flavour. So without further ado, let's get this down my fat Gregory peck. Bottoms up. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, that is really good. Yeah, as good as I remember it. There is quite a big malt character on this. Now you've got to remember with, I know they do put Sart's hops in this, but you've got to remember the malt is the big thing on this. It gives it its colour, and there is a big malt profile in it, a roasted malt profile, and that really does translate to the flavour. And it's got all the refreshing qualities of a lager as well. That's immediately apparent. And as I say, you know, I'll give you another look at that. That really does look like a Guinness in the glass, but it's not. If you hold it up to the light, you can't see it on the camera, but it's like Guinness, a very, very dark ruby colour, and that's coming from, obviously, from the roasted malt. It smells amazing. It's really nice. Nice subtle chocolate, dark roasted coffee, subtle again, and some nice sweet malt on there too. Oh, it's lovely. There's a lovely sweetness to this as well. Now, some brewers in Germany, in East Germany, and there is one. It's not Kostritzer, it's another one, and that's Percy. He wants to get out. Come on in. There you go. He'll be back in a bit. Some brewers in the east of Germany brew a well-known Schwarz beer, and I'm trying to think of the name of them. Can't remember the name. Here is the name here. And quite frankly, it is disgusting. It's full of sugar, and I think they put the sugar in there to tone down the bitterness that's on there. This has got the balance perfect without adding any sugar whatsoever, and it really is testament to how good a brewery this lot really are, because to me that's perfect. In fact, I'm toying with the idea of this being my favourite Budvar beer rather than the pale lager. I told you he'd be back, didn't I? Oh, he's crying now because he can't get in. That's Percy, by the way, in case you didn't know. Oh, come on in. Come on, knob job, get in. And he's back in the room. Yeah, I'm toying with the idea of this being my favourite Budvar beer. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love the lager, but I only like it in the cans, because if you get it in the bottles, it tastes not good. It's always skunked, in my opinion. I don't think I've had one. This hasn't got any nasty aromas from despite the green bottle. I did say it was a green bottle. Why would you put it into a green bottle? It's just ridiculous, Budvar. Stop it. But it hasn't affected this, so I'd imagine if you're going to get this in a bottle, be very careful where you get it from, because if you get it in a supermarket like this, it's more than likely going to be skunked and it won't taste nice. My advice to you is to get it in a can. Same goes for the lager as well. This is really nice. The sweetness on it is just right, in my opinion. It's definitely there. And it's like a sweetish dark chocolate, if you can imagine that, but with coffee. Now, you know me, when it comes to craft beers and they start pouring all kinds of adjuncts in there to make their beer taste sweet, you know, the breakfast stouts, the milk stouts, that kind of thing. And you normally put lactose in there. This doesn't contain lactose, of course, because they don't put adjuncts in their beer. But this balance is perfect. It's not too sweet, although there is a sweetness on it. It's just perfect, and it's very, very refreshing as well. I know it looks dark and it looks like a heavy beer, but it's not. It's got the mouthfeel and the body of a decent lager, a very decent lager, in fact. And look at the head on that. I don't know whether you can see this, but I'll try and show it to you. The uniform sized bubbles in that are testament to what a good brewery this is. He says that as there's a big bubble around there, but I'm looking on this side and it does look nice. The head retention is fantastic on that beer. This is great. Now, it may not be for everyone, because there is a roasted element to it, and there is that coffeeness to it. So if I said to you this was a dark lager, and you tasted it thinking it was going to be just like a dark coloured lager but have all the characteristics of a lager, you'd be wrong, because there is a roasted element to this, and some people may not like that if you're a dyed-in-the-wool lager drinker. However, if you're watching this channel, I would imagine that your palate, you're quite open-minded when it comes to beer flavours. If you like mild, you'd absolutely love this. This is like a really good mild, a fantastic mild, in fact, even though it's 4.7%, but it's really nice. It's got them subtle roasted flavours, but it's got the refreshment as well. So this could easily be sessioned. It's 4.7%. In my opinion, that's just on the borderline of being sessionable, but it's still great. I love this beer. It is fantastic, and it's as good as I remember it. I reviewed this about 3 years ago, and I remember at the time thinking it was fantastic, and it is just as good. It really is, and I'm so glad I found it. I've not seen it on the shelves anywhere around here until yesterday, and that was 3 years ago, and I think 3 years ago I must have bought that online from Beers of Europe or something. But yeah, and Lidl's, thank you very much for doing that, because occasionally they will get a decent beer in on their shelves, but it's really hit and miss with both Aldi's and Lidl's. I've seen some good beers in Aldi's as well, but yeah, it's quite interesting. If they've got a good one, you can get it quite cheap as well. I think this was $1.85 a bottle. That's fucking superb. That's amazing stuff. It really is. That's top of the tree, that is, for dark lager. I really don't think you're going to beat that in terms of flavour, in terms of drinkability, and in terms of refreshment as well. It's got the lot. And I said more or less the same thing about 3 years ago, and it hasn't changed. That is a fantastic beer. So, what is the verdict on Budvar Tmavý Ležák? It is fantastic, you know, to coin a phrase. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the best dark lagers you will ever taste anywhere in the world. It has everything. It's got the lovely roasted malt. It's got a nice sweetness to it, which isn't overpowering, but it's there just to take the edge off that roasted malt. Although it doesn't kill it. It's got a great body to it. And the refreshment is just the fucking cherry on the top, because this for me is the ideal beer. It's perfect. It's got lots of flavour, but it's also got the refreshment factor in it as well. And coming from a brewery like Budvar, you know it's going to be good. They have, through hard work and perseverance, through their own sheer bloody mindedness of not selling out to anybody, not cutting corners, they have grown in the last, I think it's the last 10 years, is it 39? Their growth is measured at 39%, which doesn't sound a lot. That is big. And they export over 100 million, is it hectolitres a year? Budvar is really popular, and it's getting popular over here, and I really hope it does catch on and people start drinking that. And when they try and go back to the macro beer that they've been drinking all their lives, they'll think, fuck that, we're sticking with this. But please, Budvar, if you're watching this, stop putting them in green bottles. I know it's marketing, I know it's a trademark, but it makes your beer taste crap if it's in bottles. Don't put it in bottles, put it in cans, or change the bottles to brown. Your beer will taste a whole lot better. You're doing yourself a disservice leaving them in green bottles, because it will go light struck and it tastes disgusting. Thankfully this isn't light struck, because it's been in a box and it hasn't been put out on the shelves under the supermarket lights, because even under supermarket lights or even fridge lights it will go bad. As you all know, if you watch me light struck video, it explains it all in there. But for me, that is 10 out of 10. You will not get a better dark lager, in my opinion. Certainly, I've not tasted it. If you think there is one out there, please let me know. I'll hunt it down. I may even do a comparison video if I can still get it. This is quite hard to get hold of in the UK, but I got it in Lidl's for $1.85, and in the words of Roger Daltrey, I call that a bargain. Get it if you can. Visit your local Lidl's, they may have some. Get your ass down there now. It is today, it's the 28th. I'll put this up relatively close to the 28th. Lidl's should still have some in there. Track it down, buy loads of it. If you like mild, if you like good quality lager, if you want refreshment, stick it in the fridge. This is going to be fantastic. It's 10 out of 10 all day long for me. and it's probably going to be the best dark lager I ever try. And that for me is a winner. And remember, just like this stuff, beer is working class champagne.